Thanks for joining us. I'm Robert Birch. As lawmakers prepare to begin another legislative session next month, a new federal report shows Oklahoma continues to rank near the bottom when it comes to state funding of education. Advocates for education say the report underscores the need to raise additional revenue and increase investment in the students who will make up Oklahoma's future workforce.
As Oklahoma has struggled to balance its budget in recent years, spending on education has suffered. State formula funding per student in grades K through 12 has fallen by almost 27% since 2008, and a new report shows the gap between per pupil spending in Oklahoma and the regional average continues to widen. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, Oklahoma's per pupil expenditure of $8,075 in fiscal year 2015 was lower than all surrounding states and well below the regional average of $9,744. That kind of disparity in education spending makes it difficult to compete with other states for new industry, such as the search by Amazon for another city to serve as the online retailer's second headquarters. Amazon this week reduced the list of potential hopefuls to 20 cities, and neither Oklahoma City nor Tulsa made the list. Sean Heim is executive director of the Oklahoma State School Boards Association.
We're competing with those states. We're always talking about competing for jobs, competing for businesses. Well, guess what? We're losing, as David Rainbolt and the new Step Up Coalition talked about, we're losing in economic development investment in our schools and in our teachers.
1 in 5 Oklahoma school districts have now switched to 4-day school weeks to cope with declining revenue, while the exodus of qualified teachers from the state continues to grow. Heim says the number of emergency teaching certifications approved in Oklahoma reached 1,800 in the current school year.
That was 32 5 years ago. That's a huge change because we're losing teachers year after year. The more we lose teachers, the longer we go with inaction, the harder it is to turn that tide and improve things.
State Superintendent of Public Instruction Joy Hoffmeister says Oklahoma's teacher shortage is now the number one issue facing educators.
We've raised standards. We have raised expectations. We have articulated a long-term vision and an 8-year plan to make for a competitive education for kids. But we can't do any of that without teachers.
Meanwhile, Oklahoma's student population continues to grow, increasing by more than 1,000 in the last year alone. That's resulted in larger class sizes, putting additional strains on districts which are teaching more students with fewer resources. Robert Romines is superintendent of Moore Public Schools.
If you've got a high school class that was used to having 22 kids in it, whether it be an AP or a regular math course or whatever the case might be, when you start putting 30 and 31 kids in those classes, there's less time for teachers to spend with those individual students.
While Moore has been able to cope better than some smaller districts, Romine says they've had to eliminate some courses in the face of declining revenue.
If we only have 4 or 5 students that are wanting to take a physics class, that physics class typically back in the day would make with that amount of students, but today it won't make, simply because we don't have the extra funding to do those types of things.
Ultimately, Hoffmeister says cutting course offerings and increasing class sizes is harming Oklahoma students.
Teachers that are teaching in oversized classrooms have less opportunity to identify the unique needs of each child. And this is something that I think in the end is going to prohibit us from moving forward as quickly as we could to address the greater needs of students.
Voters in Oklahoma lay the blame for education's funding problems at the feet of the legislature and the governor. Oklahoma Education Association President Alicia Priest says a poll commissioned by the OEA shows 92% of likely voters rank the legislature as only fair to poor when it comes to the state's approach to funding education, while only 12% ranked Governor Fallon's approach as excellent or good.
Those are things that our pollster has never seen before. When, your governor only has a 12% positive rating, that's eye-opening.
Senate Education Committee Vice Chair Ron Sharp doesn't argue with the low rankings for the legislature.
I think it's fair. we have had difficulty raising revenue. Again, the state of Oklahoma has not raised revenue since 1990 with the passage of House Bill 1017, because in 1992, by initiative petition, they came up with State Question 640. It is an impossible task.
The OEA is now backing a package of proposals by a coalition of business and civic leaders known as Step Up Oklahoma to raise revenue to balance the budget and provide teachers a $5,000 a year pay raise.
We are looking at the funding sources for that, and most of those funding sources were polled in our survey, and they poll very high.
The plan, which includes proposed increases in the gross production tax on oil and gas and changes in state income tax law, is projected by supporters to raise up to $800 million. Sharp believes the plan could encourage some lawmakers, who've been reluctant to support tax increases in the past, to go along with new revenue-raising measures this time.
I think this is going to help because not only do you have bankers, the oil industry is backing this. You have the 5 tribes, major tribes, that are already on board. We think the other tribes will get on board. There's so much widespread support for this.
The State Department of Education is scheduled to present its budget request to lawmakers next week, and while exact numbers are not yet known, Superintendent Hoffmeister says they will be seeking additional money in the coming fiscal year.